Images of the Americans and Russians sat around a table in Saudi Arabia today discussing an end to the war in Ukraine were quite startling and a moment of history. Russia brought in from the cold by the Trump presidency and Ukraine frozen out, absent from discussions about the war and maybe the peace. Those talks have ended for now, but President Zelenskyy is adamant he wants his place and say at the table. Here, the Defence Secretary said today only the US could provide the deterrence to keep Putin in check. More on that in a moment, but first here's Martha Fairley with the latest on the talks in Riyadh.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offered a warm handshake to his Saudi hosts as he arrived for talks. The United States and Russian delegations assembled around a table in Riyadh to discuss the war in Ukraine. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was giving little away as they posed for the cameras, but after the meeting he emphasised these are only the first steps towards any peace negotiations.
We have to understand that it's been 3.5 years since there's been any sort of regularized contact between the United States and Russia, and in some cases between any of the participants in this conflict and Russia. So the goal of today's meeting was to follow up on the phone call the President had a week ago and begin to establish those lines of communication. The work remains. Today is the first step of a long and difficult journey.
Thank you so much.
President Zelenskyy has already said that Ukraine will never accept deals made without its involvement. Greeted by Turkey's President Erdogan, he's in Ankara for separate talks. Europe's leaders also want assurances they will be included in any future peace talks. US Special Envoy to Ukraine and Russia, General Keith Kellogg, started his round of high-level meetings today with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Russia has said it's open to negotiations with Kyiv, but there's no let-up in the fighting. This, the aftermath of an overnight airstrike in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. While words are exchanged, the war on the front line grinds on. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
We're joined by our international editor, Emma Murphy. Emma, is this a step to peace or not?
It could well be a step to peace, but the big question is, what does that peace look like? Is that a peace that would be acceptable to the Ukrainians? Is that a peace that would be lasting and enduring? Or is it more of a peace that's appropriate to the financial imperatives of two nations that have a lot at stake here? And by that I mean Russia and the United States. There was certainly a sense of looking at those teams who were there in the room in Riyadh today, of looking at people who were potentially deal makers rather than peacemakers. Certainly amongst the US delegation, there were a lot of business personnel. And one of the first things that Marco Rubio said when he was asked how the meeting had gone was that it was very good and they wanted to rebuild the diplomatic relations to try and move towards an enduring peace, but that he also was very keen to explore the extraordinary opportunities, both geopolitical and economic, that any kind of lasting peace would bring. And I think that's what will absolutely terrify the Ukrainians, because they know that actually at the heart of this is not peace in their country, it's peace in their country enough for everybody else to exploit the financial benefits of that.
OK, all right, Emma, thank you. Let's go to Westminster now, to our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan. Carl, the Defence Secretary here reiterating any peace plan can only work with the Americans being involved.
Yeah, that's right. John Healey was describing what sort of security guarantees might accompany a peace deal, if there is one, which remains an extraordinarily big if. He started by saying what he knows that the Americans will want to hear, which is that the Europeans would have to do their bit.
The European countries have to play a leading part in that guarantee, but require a backstop from the US, because in the end it is only the US that can provide the deterrence to Putin that will prevent him attacking again.
That an admission, I think, that only force can guarantee whatever sort of deal is reached. Now, even in terms of peacekeeping, a number of European nations have already sounded pretty cold on Keir Starmer's idea of sending European peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. Defence MOD sources suggesting that's because European nations would rather make those kind of commitments in private. But the bigger question being asked on the sidelines of John Healey's speech is the one that Emma alluded to. Is any of this real? Is there any kind of peace deal that is acceptable or could be acceptable to both Russia and Ukraine? And if one is reached, would the Russians stick to it in a way that they have not stuck to previous peace deals in that region?
OK, Carl, in Westminster, thank you.